So in the chat box, I'm sharing the document where you can get writing partners for the October 15 webinar series. So here's what you do. If you want a partner and your name is on there, delete your name from the first one and just put it beside somebody else's. So like, let's say Claire, who's in box A2, wants to work with Elvia. So Claire would just delete her name there and she would just write Claire. And that will tell me who to connect via email. So what I'll do tonight, it's going to take me a few minutes, but that's okay. That keeps your emails, is I'll connect an email. Actually, so I'm pairing up Elvia and Claire. So go ahead and delete if you'd like a partner. And if you don't want a partner, just go ahead and delete your name from this left side. Like, let's say, David, doesn't want a partner. Just delete your name. Or Ashley doesn't want a partner. So go ahead and just write your name beside somebody and delete your name from the thing. And I know it seems like, well, wait, but it's really like whoever does it first. And if you're like, so Elvia is like, oh, I don't need to delete my name because Claire's already partnered with me. So just like basically pick somebody. So Bishoy and Rebecca are both seeking partners. Great. Bishoy and Rebecca, you are partners. If you feel too shy about writing your name next to somebody, just write seeking partner beside your name. So Travis, great, you're partnered with Pallavi. See what I'm doing here? So you guys can go ahead. So Christopher and Adam, seeking partner. So Adam, your partner is Christopher. Boom. And I'll share with you guys emails tonight. After I send the email out, I'll be like, hey, you're partners. Okay, so go ahead and keep doing that. Meanwhile, some of you are typing in questions, so I'm going to move over to the questions. Okay. Rebecca says, I love that poem. Good, I love that poem too. Danny asks, what is my relationship to Korea? I seem to have a lot of essays from Korean students. I don't know. I mean, I guess, let's see. The place where I worked with a couple of those students, I mean, I worked in Korea for a while, for a couple months, but most of the students that I work with are, a pretty variety. There's a large variety of students. But I'd say, I guess earlier in my essay writing career, like when I was writing those, there were, a bunch of Korean students that I worked with. So I love Seoul. We lived in Apgujeong, in case you were curious. Adam says, I'm working on my essays for months, but it's still blank. I'm having a difficult time talking about my environment without focusing on people other than me. Do you have any tips? Yeah. Adam, my question for you is, did you do the objects exercise? Because that's your world, and those are going to connect you to the essences. My second question is one I've already asked, but, do you know what you want to study? If you do, you can write about that. So those are two questions that I'll throw back your way. Let me know what you have to say about that, and I'm going to go on to the next question. Bishoy asked, will writing this personal statement for UC work with Common App also? Bishoy, you weren't listening. I totally said you could. So yes, just to underscore it for people, or maybe it was breaking up at that point. But yes, your personal statement for the UC will totally work. I'm just shaming you, Bishoy. I'm sorry. Will totally work for your Common App, and it'll save you a bunch of time. And don't listen to people saying that you can't use your UC for your Common App. It's just not true. There is kind of a judgment out there that, and I know that I'm focusing on California essays a lot, I apologize, but it's just because I'm in California and a lot of people apply to California schools. Like UCLA, 100,000 apps, it's the most applied to school. So anyway, I don't feel as bad doing that. But essentially, for students who are, trying to figure out the, we're trying to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was looking at all the other questions popping in. Yes, it'll work. Oh, there's this judgment that we need to be really factual and like just say what you want to say for the UC essay, but I think you can still be creative and still include information. So I think, definitely use your UC for your Common App. Rebecca asks, if I'm able to attend a Wednesday session, would it still be all right if I have a stranger as my partner? Yeah, totally. If you're not able to attend, it's totally fine. Don't worry. So yes, please do still attend. I'm always going to be sending you the recordings. Gail says, I logged on a little late. Are the PDFs being sent to our emails or resources on your website? So Gail, if you click on the control panel, there are two places where I posted the resource, so you'll find them there. And also, yes, I will send them in an email. Jennifer asks, would you say it's a good idea to start your essay with an anecdote? Jennifer, I'd say if the anecdote is core to the essay, meaning if it feels like an essential part of establishing, for example, like who you were at one point in time, like your status quo, then yeah, it could be useful. But an anecdote is often just kind of like a nice, fun little story. And if it's, unless it's core to like some important thing that you haven't, you know, unless it's like, when I say core, I mean like connected to a core value. So make sure that your essay, if you are talking about an anecdote, is revealing core values. And I think, so the third quality I think a great essay has, besides vulnerability and so what moments, is information. And by information, I mean core values. Like I think by the end of a great essay, we should know 5 to 7 of your core values. And I've said that to some counselors, and they're like, "That's way too many." But I challenge them, and I challenge anybody to look at a great essay. You can probably identify 5 to 7 core values in it. So, the answer to should you start off your essay with an anecdote, if you must for the status quo, or if you feel like it's the best way to illustrate some of your core values. And it all also depends on where you're going with the essay. You know, so with all that having been said, I hope that answers your question, Jennifer. Sydney asks, can an essay be centered around the obtaining of only one attribute, curiosity, for example? It could, but what I'd say, Sydney, is that once you've established curiosity, I think that you can probably go further, because once you've established that, if you're still establishing that, it can start to sound repetitive. And if it could be that, now here's an exception to this. If you look at the example essay D in the packet and the analysis that I'll send in a little bit, and by the way, if you haven't, this is a pay what you can webinar, but make sure that you've sent in, however much money you pledged to send in. There was like a recommended amount, but make sure you do that, because that's what's going to give me the list of who I'm sending out the resources to. So in terms of can a quality be only one attribute, or sorry, can an essay be centered around only one attribute? I just think that if we're just focusing on one thing, it could feel kind of trivial. Like the whole essay is like this big story, and then at the end I became curious. So don't do that. But if you've got a lot of different things that you're telling about yourself, and then the thing that unites all of the qualities and all of the stories and all of the things that you're telling is curiosity, that could be cool. And if you look at the essay type D, which is called the 5 families essay, you'll see an example of an essay that really deeply gets at like all these different parts. And by deeply, that could be argued, but there's a lot of variety in that essay. But what connects all of the different families that he lived with is this quality of vulnerability. So yes, if it's like your focusing lens, but I would say if the only thing you learned from the main story you tell is that curiosity, like there could probably be a little bit more. And or another thing I'll say is, if you can tell that story in just one paragraph or 2 paragraphs, then do it, and let's learn some more stuff about you. Danny was asking me why narrative and montage structure, and he said, do most well-written essays fall into this category? Well, I think all stories ever fall into this category, because essentially a narrative is just, one moment led to another moment, led to another moment. It's just connecting the events causally. And sometimes we do that, and sometimes, we talk about a lot of different things. Like I'm telling a story and I'm having all this random stuff, and someone's like, what's the point you're making? And you say, I'm frustrated. And it's like, that's the thing that connects this montage of ideas. Like I'm telling you all this stuff because my thesis is that I'm frustrated. And so that montage, is connecting a bunch of random things through a common quality or a common value, or what I call a focusing lens. We're going to talk more about that in a day or two. But that's, so essentially, yes, I think all essays fall into narrative or montage. Ginny says, your examples seem very well developed. How many drafts did it take to get to the final versions? Ginny, a lot. I choose really well developed essays because I feel like we learn more from them. People often request, hey, could you just show how a bad essay was developed? And I can do that, and we will probably do that at some point. But with the main essays, I'd say, so the first one, the Stanford essay, the with debate essay, she ended up at Stanford. That essay probably took her 12 drafts. The second essay, the endodontics, was probably the same, 10 or 12 drafts. The type C essay was more like 3 or 4 drafts when you read that one. And the type D essay was probably like 8 drafts. So, some students feel like, they want to keep revising. It depends on how well the students, it can sometimes take longer to write certain types of essays. Like I find that the type D essay, once we've got the thing, once we've got the topic, we can, do it in fewer drafts, but, sometimes that can take longer. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Christopher asks, what should we do if our interest is something that not many people understand? I'm trying to write about my robotics club, but I'm having difficulty telling the story without giving all the technical details that could confuse people. Good question, Christopher. A really good, specific question. And I like these specific questions. I think this helps, and other people, it can help. So what should we do if our interest is something not many people understand? I'd say, Chris, just give enough info for us to really understand the basics of what we would need to understand how this shaped you. So if we take as the goal of the essay to understand the values that you're bringing to a college, or the values that will shaped your life and that you will carry forth beyond college, then all we need is enough information to understand how that value was developed, how that brought out. I know that sounds kind of general, but I'd have to look at the essay to be able to see. But what I'd say is, if it feels like it's getting too technical, it's probably getting too technical. And one way that you can think about this is think about each of your paragraphs as needing to demonstrate a particular value. And you can kind of think of them as a theme. And if you've written a paragraph where there are no values that are coming forth, it better be setting up something really good, or you should cut it. Because I find that sometimes in the opening paragraph, that's not really, I call this scoring points, demonstrating values that are going to contribute to college and beyond. That's what scoring points is. And even in your opening, setup paragraphs, you can be demonstrating, hard work or creativity or resourcefulness, And I think that, it's really important to be doing that. That's how I know an essay is working. Oftentimes when I'm reading an essay, I'll read 3 paragraphs and I'm like, I'm not learning anything really about you that I can name. So, I encourage students to cut. But essentially, Christopher, the focus here is what is the cool or interesting or valuable thing, the skill, the value that you've developed, and then work backwards from that. How much information do they need in order to see how I developed that? Adam answered my questions from the beginning. He said, no, I don't have a solid plan yet, but my filler would be neuroscience if it would help me write the essay. Adam, if you're feeling super lost, and you're saying to me you're a type D essay person, then I think, and I'll get into this on Wednesday, but I think it can be useful to just pick something that you're passionate about, like neuroscience, and ask yourself, for example, and if there are any other type D essay students online, it can be nice to pick a filler, a placeholder, because it'll give you a way to map out the essay. So let's say you're interested in neuroscience, and let's say you try and imagine what would be the qualities of a great neuroscientist. Okay, well, you've got some of those qualities. So spend a few minutes maybe brainstorming what are the qualities of a great neuroscientist, and then how have you demonstrated each of those qualities? And if you look at the type B essay, I'm encouraging you to write a type B essay, which if you look at my website, just type in type B, you'll look at the bottom and see this step-by-step process. It's one that we're going to go into more in depth tomorrow. But in terms of, should you write about neuroscience? I don't know. But it can give you a path. It can give you a way to start thinking about what's really important to you and why it's important to you. Because ultimately, you could still switch out your ultimate career or leave neuroscience blank. And you've still, if you've thought about, different qualities that you've developed and how you develop them, you've still said something meaningful and interesting if you've really gotten into depth about how you develop those qualities. What colleges are interested ultimately is not what career you're going to go into, but what are the different, things that have shaped you. And you can look, in terms of what has shaped you, look at your values list. Write neuroscience, write an N beside qualities of a great neuroscientist on your values list. And then look to your objects list. Is there anything there that's really important to you that could connect to those values? So that's a pretty rich brainstorm. And if you're still need more brainstorming exercise, you can type in brainstorm, but you'll find the 21 details exercise. That one can be a fun one too. Travis says, I wrote a 750 word essay and can't seem to cut it down to 650. Any advice? So Travis, I have 2 bits of advice. One is, if you feel like so 3 questions, okay? And this is a question for counselors. Counselors, what do you do when somebody says, I want to cut my essay? Well, first we need to look at the content, Travis. And I would encourage you to take your essay to someone or read it aloud and ask yourself first this question: is this my deepest story? Is this my deepest story? Another way of asking that is this essay truly vulnerable? Does the reader not only get to know who I am, intellectually, but can the reader feel me through this essay? And if you're not sure, hand it to somebody, let them read it and ask them, does it feel vulnerable? Does this feel deep? And they'll answer it. Tell them to be honest. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Odds are, if it's an early draft and you're not sure, that it's not deep yet. Okay, and we're going to get into how to do that. So that's the first question to ask. Second, in terms of structuring it, if you really feel like, okay, yes, this is definitely my topic, this is definitely my deepest story, Google revising your essay in 5 steps. and you'll come up with my exercise. Or just go to my website, revise your essay, type that in, and you'll get a 5-step exercise for revising your essay. And what it'll do, it'll force you to really articulate what each paragraph is about. Once you articulate what each paragraph is trying to do, and another way of thinking about this is like, you have to think of each paragraph as your employee. And you've got to make sure you equip that employee with a very specific task so it knows what it's doing. So that you know if the paragraph, the employee, is wasting its time. Once you understand exactly what that paragraph is trying to do, it'll be a lot easier to know what to cut. And the revising your essay in 5 steps exercise on the website will help you do that. So I think that's actually a complete answer, because odds are, I don't know. I mean, I haven't read your essay. We've never met before, but odds are the essay could go deeper. And so the 750 words are actually going to change a lot over this week. So I don't know that I would actually encourage you to do step 2 yet. I would actually just, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving you all the information yet because I just don't have time. But I feel like we could take your topic deeper. Like you can always go deeper. And I'll give you an exercise for doing that tomorrow. Sorry, I'm just not going to give it to you right now. But I want you to ask, actually, I want you to give yourself this test. And if you're really annoyed and like want to just go ahead and do it, then go ahead and do the revise your essay in 5 steps, because you'll be able to revise it. And maybe it'll work great for you. But what I really want you to do tonight, your homework would be with your writing partner, whoever you're working with, or a friend, email a friend and say, hey, or email 3 friends and say, does this feel like my deepest story? Does this feel truly vulnerable? Here, I'll give you something else. For those of you who've already written a draft, here are 4 questions to ask about your essay to know if it's really doing its job. And by doing its job, I mean, is it demonstrating essential values to a college, values that will contribute to that campus and to society at large? Number 1, is it vulnerable? Number 2, do I have information in there? Do I reveal 5 to 7 core values? Okay, is it vulnerable? Do I reveal 5 to 7 core values? 3, are there interesting so what moments? And I think you should have maybe 3 or 4 at least. So what moments are basically insights. So maybe you talk about, taking apart a car in your garage. So what? What does it tell us about you? The insights need to be surprising, unpredictable, insightful in order for the essay to really pop. Because if you just leave sort of like, oh, and I was in robotics club. So what? We built a robot. So what? Keep asking yourself that. You'll get to an insight, and that insight better be interesting, surprising. And how do you test that? Give it to somebody and ask, are my insights actually insightful? You can separate you can highlight, or have somebody else highlight what are the moments that should be insightful, like so what, and ask, is it really surprising? And then 4, is it well crafted? And this is kind of the trickiest one to judge. But if you do steps 1, 2, and 3, if you've made the essay vulnerable, you're revealing 5 to 7 core values, and you've got so what moments, chances are you've spent some time crafting it. Craft is, do you express something meaningful in a succinct way? Okay, so that's my quick how to write a great essay test. That was probably more than you were asking for, but you got it. Bishoy says, I haven't faced a traumatic challenge or anything, but I have faced several minor challenges, like speed bumps on the road, not one giant hurdle. One of the most being overcoming myself as an obstacle. Am I off to a good start? Well, overcoming myself is a pretty broad thing. So if you can get really specific with one particular challenge you faced or a few things that you faced, like overcoming myself, I'm not really sure what that means. So I would encourage you to work with your partner to find something specific in the service of talking about how you've developed core values, because I think those are like the key. You'll hear me say this a lot. Go back to that values exercise. What are those core values that you developed through those challenges? Because that's what's going to really demonstrate that you've really got something to bring to a college campus. One thing that you'll hear me say a bunch is that you don't get into college because your parents got divorced. You get into college for articulating in interesting ways how you metabolized the experience. I like to use that phrase, metabolized. Like, what did you turn that into? So, yeah, that's my answer, Bishoy. Let me know if that answers your question. Rebecca asks, how much deal can you give a hardship without making it sound as if you're still stuck in what happened, or without burdening the reader with too many details? Great question, Rebecca. And here's my answer. If you're writing a challenges essay, put the challenges in the first third of the essay, or the first 25%. So if you're thinking 650 words, in the first 200 words, get all the information about what the challenge was in. And then we need a turning point. We need to know, after the challenges, what did you do about it, and what did you learn? So that's a simple 3-step structure if you're writing a challenges essay. If you're in the type C category, that's what I'll talk about tomorrow. What did you do? What was the challenge you faced? What did you do about it? What did you learn? Oftentimes, students will be stuck in an essay and they'll feel like, oh, it sounds like I'm not over it, because like 82% of their essay is about the challenge. And hey, if you're writing about a challenge for the first time, 82% of the first draft might be about the challenge. It's okay. Squish it up into the beginning and then talk about, because this is what gets you into college, right? What did you do about it and what did you learn? And if it's something specific and really dark, we don't need all the gory details. Students in the past have been fine with saying like, there was, I experienced physical and emotional abuse at the hands of my father. And that's fine. I mean, that's enough information. We don't need to know exactly what he called you or, what he said to you. And by you, I mean general, not you, Rebecca. Danny asks, should I have reservations if I feel I'm coming across standoffish with my goals and aspirations? Danny, I'd need a little more information to understand what you mean about standoffish with my goals and aspirations. So say more what you mean by that. I think the answer to your question is, in order to not sound standoffish, is that those goals and aspirations need to be linked to deep values. And the values, I keep coming back to that, because they're the things that link us all as humans. They're universal. So if you feel like your thing is not universal, connect it to something that is universal. And that'll help us connect with it more. Adam says, okay, I'll play around with what you're saying. Cool. Travis says, thanks. Bishoy says, I'll think about it and make it more specific. Great. So we got about 5 minutes because we were delayed when the phone cut out. Any other questions? And while you're thinking, I'm just going to keep encouraging you, if you're on the Google spreadsheet, to go ahead and pick a writing partner if you'd like one, or delete your name. Adam asks, so you pair me with somebody random. How do I contact them? You'll receive an email, and I will. I'll connect you. I said that, but anyway, I'll say it again. I will connect you via email tonight with that partner. So Bishoy says, completely off topic, you mentioned the 16 personalities, and I love that. I'm an ENFP, just wondering what your personality type is. Bishoy, I too test as an ENFP. I want to be an ENFJ, though. So my personality type is an ENFJ. Adam's apologizing for missing that. I'm sorry. I should stop shaming people for forgetting stuff. I should just tell them. I apologize. I apologize to your apology. And does anybody else know their personality type? I'm curious. Feel free to type it in. Rebecca's an INFJ. This actually might be a good way to partner people. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and type in your personality type into this little doc here. If you know your MBTI, I'll put a question mark beside it. If you don't know what that is, you can go to, and if you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to have enough to do tonight, like with my partner, go to 16personalities.com and take a personality test. I'd be curious to hear what people's personalities are. Cool. Oh, good. Bishoy is saying that ENFP, Bishoy, and INFJ, Rebecca, are supposed to work great together according to the website. Good. I'm happy for that. Rebecca says, I just want to say, so much of what you said resonated with me. Good. I'm glad. The hero's journey, MBTI, even your journey as a student. Awesome. Thanks for being so open. I'm so glad. Thank you, Rebecca. By the way, because I'm as an ENF person, I thrive on like feedback and, like people saying like, oh, I loved this or I love that. So I really, at any point, welcome feedback. If it's positive, I love that because it helps me feel like I'm doing a good job. And as like an older child and as a firstborn, like I really value that if you really knew me. But also I really value like critiques and things that would help make this webinar experience better for you. Let me know. Because if it could make it better for you, it's probably can make it better for other people. So feel free to email me those things. I'll hold for another minute to see if there are any final questions, and then we'll call it a night. I'll talk over the final 30 seconds. So your homework, as I've said, is I'm going to pair you up with your partners. It's the first thing I'm going to do right now, to find a topic. And if you're a counselor, I welcome you to like actually, write an essay if you want. I mean, some people think, oh, I'm too busy for that. But I think it would be a fun thing to do. My dream was to take a group of counselors off to some like retreat and to write our personal statements with each other. And so to find your topic, and if you want, optional bonus, do your Myers-Briggs and see what your personality type is. I'm working on some material for that, and I think that it can be a great way to help, especially in the Type D students, the Type D essay. If you're a Type D student, you might also want to get the book Do What You Are. That's a great book that I'll talk about tomorrow. Do What You Are. It's a book that helps you, based on your personality, look at different careers. So that's your homework. I'm going to send you the recording of this. I'll be sending the recording each night, just as soon as I can get it up on YouTube. And if working with a writing partner, make sure to send them your agreement. I'll email you all this in a few minutes. But yeah, I noticed that I kind of picked up speed as I got more excited in answering all these questions. Rebecca says, last question. If you're a student who had financial problems, should that be mentioned in your essay? Yes. Or just in your actual application. Mention it in your essay. Find a way to work it in. I think you can. If you're writing about difficulties, and I think that you are, Rebecca, because you asked about it a minute ago, then yeah, I think it is a good idea to mention that. That's now obviously there are exceptions to that, but I think it can be good because it's probably led to certain challenges which have led to certain values. All right. Last call if you want a writing partner to get on the dock. Let's see. Amar and Jennifer are seeking partners, so I'm pairing you up. Cool. And if you're listening to the recording, just go to this doc that I will send you the link to in the email. And final call, if you haven't, sent in the payment, please do that. You can send it to PayPal, ethansawyer@gmail.com, or you can just email me, and I will send you the link to do that. All right. Last question. Bishoy says, anybody, you can miss any sessions. I'm going to send you all the recordings. Okay. Have an awesome night, and I will see you in 22 and a half hours. Be well. Good night and good luck.